Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm here with the one and only Ilhan Reifowitz, who is a professor at SUNY-Empire State College, a Daily Kos contributing editor, one of the best, and the author of The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric on the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump. And it is opportune that we are going to talk about this subject today, which is sort of driving the nation crazy. I actually said I was going to give this minimal time, and I mean that. But today is special because I want to kind of get it out there, get Ilhan's point of view, and then we're going to move on to important issues. Ilhan Reifowitz, welcome to Politics Done Right.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very kind and generous introduction. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's actually very much warranted. But Ilhan, let me ask you a few things, Ilhan. Where the hell are we?
Well, we are seeing the tribalization of American politics. I'm seeing that word used in the last 48 hours by political pundits, by writers to describe the very current environment we are in, thanks to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, because of the language he used towards the squad, the four congresswomen who are women of color, 3 of whom were born in this country. He told them to go back to their countries, even, of course, they were born here, and he called their countries crime-infested. These are racist. This is racist language. He is a racist, and the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives voted to condemn him yesterday. That's the first time in over a century that a House of Congress has voted to condemn the remarks of a president. So to say that this is historic is accurate. The President of the United States is not doing something new here, even for himself. Remember, we keep saying this, he announced his presidential campaign by talking about Mexican immigrants as rapists and drug dealers and killers. He talks this way because this is the kind of politician that he is. He sets out to divide Americans, to get Americans to hate one another. In some ways, it's unfair to people who are in actual tribes to use that language, but the English language we have, we have to go with the words we've got. But this is what he does. This is, and in the book is what I talk about. It's what Rush Limbaugh did, and it's what Rush Limbaugh does, and Donald Trump picked up on this. It is the way he excites his supporters by playing and preying on their racial and cultural resentments as white Americans who are afraid of black and brown and non-whites, afraid of demographic change. And the way he gets them motivated is not by talking about the money he's saving them, because he's not saving them any money. He's not putting any money in their pockets unless they're in the top 1 or 2%, because that's where his tax cuts focus their benefits. He has to distract those voters thinking too much about his economic policies by getting them worked up about the brown people over there.
In other words, it's a bait and switch.
Exactly. He's playing them for fools.
Now, it is interesting because I did a woman, her name is Tiffany Cross, was on MSNBC yesterday. She is the, I guess, a publisher of a rag in D.C., and what she said is she is very happy that the media is finally calling a thing a thing. That thing being they're finally saying President Trump is a racist. And at first they would use different words like he made racial intonations. He made, they kind of catered to it, which sort of gave him some sort of his words some plausibility of not being racist. And she's saying exactly what you said. He's not doing anything he hasn't done before. He hasn't really changed his rhetoric. Now, what I think it's important, I was on Facebook this morning, and a friend of mine, when I posted that little video snippet of what Cross said, she said, Egberto, it doesn't really matter because his people simply don't care. And what I replied to her is, you're right. His people simply don't care, but we are not pointing out that he's a racist to his people. We're pointing out that he's a racist to all those people who thought their vote didn't matter and may think their vote does not matter. If they start to see him as if the media points him out as a racist and they start to see him as existential to them, then that would put the fire under them, in my opinion, to go out there and vote. And your thoughts on that?
No, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I noticed something in today's New York Times, and the New York Times has been more reluctant to call him a racist. I don't know if in the news section they've ever said that he was a racist or called him a racist. Interesting, though, I noticed this morning there was an article about the Philippines where the President Duterte, and in that headline, the headline referred to him as an unrepentant sexist. And it talked about this specific policy he had. Now, if they can call the president of the Philippines an unrepentant sexist, why can't they call Donald Trump a racist when he obviously is using racist language, making, yes, racially charged, whatever you want to call it, remarks? That's another way of defining them. But you have to also call them what they are, racist. And the point of the media is supposed to be to tell the truth, not necessarily to worry about how it's going to be read by his voters or his supporters or his opponents, for that matter. I think.
Now, why do you think they're so hesitant to simply call a spade a spade?
There is, a general sort of establishment feel to the New York Times. There are different definitions of racism. I mean, I guess you can look at it a million different ways. You can talk about racism being actions and not words. I don't really subscribe to that very limited definition of racism. There are, people who will say, unless you say, I don't like this person because they are black, then you haven't crossed the line of racism, that you're just using racially charged language, whatever. And I get that, but there's a point at which people are not stupid. Donald Trump is not going to go out there and use the N-word. And if you limit yourself to the most obvious, blatant, Klan-style rhetoric, for that to be the only kind of racism means that the word is not very useful.
Exactly. We're speaking to Ilhan Reifowitz, who is a professor at SUNY-Empire State College, a Daily Kos contributor and author of The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric on the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump. And this is a book here. Folks, let me tell you, all that we're seeing now is not only documented in this book, but it's explained in this book. The mechanics of what's being done here is well thought out and well expressed in Ilhan's book. It is something probably you should get for quite a few of your friends, including some of your friends that subscribe to Trump's tenets, if you will. Because I think after reading this book isn't, the way I see it, I don't think this book is written solely for the person who is, to enlighten the progressive. I think a good, stable conservative who still has an affinity for Trump could get a bit out of this, because that's just how well it's written. Now, Ilhan, let me ask you another question. Why is it that you think a large percentage of those people who should know better, meaning many Republicans who should know better, many business persons who should know better, why is it that they are not coming out strongly, not specifically to condemn this guy, but to weaken this guy's position, which would be self-condemning, if you will?
Well, I mean, you're talking about members of the political establishment or the business establishment, not the average.
Right. I mean, people that know better. People that really themselves, we know, are not racist.
Right. The answer to that is that he has delivered on at least some of their priorities. Simply by being in the White House, he allows them to confirm judges, two to the Supreme Court, right? We have Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch. The former was in a seat stolen from Barack Obama's nominee. That's what their interests are: cutting taxes for the rich, getting people on the federal and on the Supreme Courts to back conservative positions on social issues, but probably more importantly, to back conservative issues on conservative ideas and politics on economic issues, on issues of regulation, and on issues like gerrymandering and voting rights, which help perpetuate further Republican victories. They are playing that game. They are holding their nose. They are unprincipled. They believe that the only principle that matters are conservative victories that help line their pockets, and they are willing to go along with Trump in order to do that. Some have turned away from him, but and we can respect that. People like Charlie Sykes, people like Bill Kristol, who may have been wrong over the years on many issues, but have shown some principles. I'm very disappointed in Mitt Romney. I don't understand what the purpose of in Mitt Romney's mind of running for the Senate at his age, with his record of accomplishment as a former major party nominee. What was the purpose of going to the United States Senate from a red state other than to stand up to Donald Trump, other than to provide a Republican alternative to Donald Trump to rally around? I'm very disappointed, frankly, in his performance.
Yeah, that is sad. So, what do you think is the outcome? I have some ideas, but I'd rather hear yours first. I believe this is well calculated. I think this is well timed. And I think if the Democrats play it wrong, they lose.
I think you're right. It is not an accident that all of these tweets have taken out of the media the fact that Trump caved on the census question. I mean, he had to. He had no choice, according to the Supreme Court's decision. But he caved on the census question, which was a major, major defeat for the white nationalists, keep America white people who back him. They could have been very disenfranchised, disappointed in him. Instead, he pivots from that loss to another way of revving up that same base with this "go back to your country," you brown women remarks. He's not stupid when it comes to the politics of resentment, when it comes to the tribalization of politics. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows the only way he can win the presidency again is by maximizing the racially resentful white base and the other people who maybe don't love that but are willing to go along with it because they see him as fighting for them or whatever. He's not going to get more than 46% of the popular vote. Maybe 47 if he's lucky, depending on if there's third-party candidates. Maybe he can eke out another electoral college victory. He's never going to be a landslide president, despite the fact that he has said he won in a landslide. But he's also said a lot of other things that are lies. So the only way he can win is to rev up the base and hope to draw another inside straight like he did last time. But beyond that, he also doesn't know any way of doing things other than the way he has been doing them. The man is 71 years old. He's not going to change. This is who he is. And he won the presidency this way once. Why not try it again?
It is sad because for someone as inept as he is, that he could actually win again. I'm more concerned now about the remnants of what's left after he's gone. After all, if he gets 45% of the vote, that simply tells me that a large percentage of Americans are either willfully ignorant, delusional, or, and I try to say this when I'm speaking to the other side with some modicum of respect, but you have to wonder how they process information in their heads to somehow fall for somebody or continue to elect somebody like this. And if that is the case, if he is elected, there's a hell of a lot more repair in this country that'll come after those 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one thing we have to bear in mind is that there are about 40% of the voters who will vote for a Republican no matter who the candidate is, right? Even, when Trump won in 2016, he got just about the same percentage of the white vote that Mitt Romney did. I think he did 1% better among whites overall. So some of it is the fact that any Republican simply starts out at about 40. It's just a matter of how many of the people who end up voting for him are voting for him in spite of his racism and his race baiting, and how many of them are voting for him because they like it.
Right. I really think, after speaking to a lot of his voters and people that would likely vote with him before, I think a lot of these people are voting for him in spite of him being a racist. In other words, they are so attached to the Republican Party and they are so disenchanted with their impression of what the Democratic Party represents that they see the Republican Party as the better of two evils. And I think that is just how some Democrats look at the Republican Party, that it is again, as a Democratic Party, that it's the better of two evils, so they'll vote Democratic. I think one of the things that we have to do here in independent media is just be able to tell things the way that they are and allow folks to get past that thing where it's tribal where it comes to political parties, because that not being the case, we're killing the country, and we've seen this happen in other countries.
No, you're absolutely right, and I do think there are ways forward, and I do think Barack Obama has provided some examples of that, and that's what I wrote about in my previous book, which was Obama's ideas. He understood how to use empathy, and I think he was sincere. I mean, if you read his writings going back to the early 90s when he wasn't interested in politics, or if he was, it was a long game. He talked a lot about empathy. He would talk to people and say, look, I understand that working class white voters, for example, don't feel that their position is so great and they have suffered from X and Y and Z, and I understand their pain. And by saying that, those people listening to him can say, oh, wow, this is a guy who's not just against me, but he understands where I'm coming from. And then the next part of his speech, he can say, and so have Americans of color suffered. They've suffered from X and Y and Z. And those people that he just showed empathy for, those white working class voters, feel that he cares about them. So they're saying to themselves, maybe I'm going to be a little more willing to listen to the other things he has to say. And then those people can feel more empathy for the Americans of color that Obama is talking about in the next sentence and in the next paragraph. That's how you repair tribalization. I do believe that Barack Obama has shown us how to do this, both in terms of political success, right? He won the presidency twice with more than 50% of the popular vote. And not that every person in America has the strength of character of Barack Obama, but the more you and I and people out there who want to reach out can model his behavior, I think the more success we'll have, not only in reaching voters in terms of winning elections, but just in terms of making our society one in which there is more empathy, in which it will be a better place to live.
Right. I agree completely. And that is something that we must work on. That is something that is my passion. I have the phrase that I always use. When we unite the ghettos, the barrios, and Appalachia, we would have won. And in effect, that is exactly what we work towards. We got to put all these people together, because you know what? The just continual fighting a 50-50 or 49-51 country just doesn't work. So Ilhan is the author of The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric on the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump. This book is prescient. This book illustrates exactly what happened, what is happening, and you know what? By inference, what is likely to happen. Ilhan, Reifowitz, it's been my pleasure having you on Politics Done Right.
It's always a pleasure for me too, Egberto. Thank you.